Hello, everyone. So, this is our next installment of our provider spotlight, our creatively named provider spotlight with meddkit and our clients and other wonderful private healthcare practitioners in the area. In this case, our private healthcare practitioner is not so much in the area. She is in Louisiana. And Katrina Boden is not only a client of meddkit's, but she is the founder and executive director of Superior Counseling. And Superior Counseling is actually a 30-person behavioral health agency that services a wide geography in Louisiana. And they've been providing, actually before, a number of years, even before COVID happened, virtual and in-person therapy to thousands of residents in Louisiana. And so today we're going to talk with Katrina about not only how she got into business, owning this multi-therapist agency, but also about mental health and some of the things related to mental health that have been, I would say more popularized since COVID happened. So welcome, Katrina.
Hi, how you doing, John?
Pretty good. So maybe just tell everyone listening here, like, how did you get into business? How did you get started with mental health? What's your story?
So the story is a lovely one. So my background is in elementary education. So everyone knows every school teacher has to supplement their income, right? Especially in Louisiana. So I also have a background in accounting. So I started doing accounting work for a mental health rehab agency in 2000. It was run by two men. So we'll just say that I didn't like their paperwork. I didn't like the way they presented none of that. So I said, I'll just change everything for you. I'll do your letterhead over. I'll work with your clients, put you some systems in place. And they said, sure. So one day he approached me and said, what if I just replace your income, give you a raise, and you quit your job? I know you have a master's in elementary ed, and I know you love teaching, but we really need you here. So I said, sure, why not? I love the clientele and the staff that we were working with then. And then I started that journey with him. Unfortunately, within a year and a half, he tragically had a heart attack and died. And our agency was comprised of single mothers and single fathers. So we probably had the majority of our staff were single mothers, and we probably had about 5 single males on our staff. And so when our owner passed away, they were like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to live? How are we going to take care of our children? I said, you all, if you stick with me, I'll get us through this, right? Because I was the executive. No, I was an office manager at the time. So I left my job as a teacher to become an office manager at a mental health rehab agency. So just imagine my mother's face. She was just like, what? So unfortunately, when that happened, I just decided, hey, we'll get through it. And since he had taught me how to do the billing, I understood the policies and procedures, and we just kept trucking. We kept trucking. And long story short, about 11 years ago, I started my own agency. And so now we have Superior Counseling Services.
Wow. So what did you have to learn? I mean, probably a bunch, but what was sort of like the biggest thing you had to learn from when that first happened to when to now where you're running a 30 provider agency and you've got a consulting business and a few other businesses too that I probably don't know about if we're being honest here. So what was that biggest like hurdle for you to overcome, so to speak?
So the biggest hurdles would have been all the stipulations and new guidelines that Louisiana put in place over the years. So when we first started the business, I was working with Helping Hands for Community Development in 2000. It was kind of free for all. They had a few little guidelines. We did not have to be accredited. So, we looked at the policies that the state put out. We ran our businesses accordingly. Then Of course, with all of the issues going on with mental health and people not understanding it, they put a lot of, we call it red tape, but they say, okay, you all have to be accredited. So reading those manuals, getting your agency in line, that was about it. Once you start learning the basics of a business, and with my background in elementary ed, meaning I've always had to know how to look at an assessment, figure out a path to get us to the end result. So I've been pretty good with doing that. So it's just building, you're just continuously building on your business, building, learning and building.
I've never heard that one before, that regulations are a big challenge in starting a private practice in healthcare. Probably every single client we talk to, every single provider we talk to is like, yeah, these regulations don't make it so easy. So we definitely know that struggle, know that pain. So let's talk a little bit. You mentioned mental health, you mentioned behavioral health. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, one of the things that we've been seeing or hearing since COVID happened is that mental health, behavioral health has become a more pressing issue. More people are struggling with things that they either didn't realize, or new things that have popped up ever since, all of the staying at home started happening. Number one, are you seeing that? Is your team seeing that in Louisiana? Is that a make-believe story? Is that fake news, or is there a real truth there? And if so, how's that affecting people?
Well, no, it is not fake news. Okay. What we find is that we've always had issues with mental health here in the state of Louisiana, nationwide, but it's been the invisible disease, right? The disease nobody wants to talk about, or they don't acknowledge, or they excuse it by saying, oh, that's just all in your head. Stop the thinking, make lemonade out of lemons, right? But now, or the one that you hear, oh, she's just crazy. Oh, he's just crazy. They've always been that way. When COVID hit, it made everyone stop and realize that, hey, that's not fake news. Like, the people aren't making it up.
Yeah.
There are people do hear voices. People are suffering from depression. They have anxiety. And now with COVID, because it's in the news so much, people are realizing that the issues that I've had for the last 10 years, they're just not made up. Like, these are real symptoms of an invisible disease. And because it's being talked about in the news so much and in the media, people are able to get help now for things that they didn't get help for before. They're realizing that, over the years, I've been self-medicating. I've been taking sleeping medicine at night, or cold medicine, or I've been drinking, or, doing recreational drugs. It's because of these underlying conditions that I didn't realize were conditions. You never know you're sick unless somebody tells you you are.
It's so interesting you said that, like the self-medication concept. It's like, like our culture encourages it, so like me, I would always think back when, after my first job, I out of college, I would be like, oh yeah, like it's fine for me to smoke a cigarette and drink, a couple shots of whiskey, and like, what am I really doing there? You know what I mean? Like, I needed someone to talk to. I needed to say something, but I felt like I couldn't. And the culture gave me this Band-Aid to sort of, drink the problem away, so to speak. And for some reason that's culturally acceptable, but talking to people is not, and actually working on the difficult problems and having the courage to say, hey, I'm struggling. I'm going through something. Can you help me? Like, somehow that's not seen as admirable, or it hadn't been. And now, so what you're saying with COVID, like, now everyone, that problem's at home. Everyone's getting a taste of that. And so now they're starting to understand what it's like for everyone, maybe.
Right. And then with your entertainers stepping out saying, hey, I've been suffering from depression, or your athletes are letting people know that this is real, and if you can see an athlete or entertainer suffer with this, then it must be okay for me to suffer with it as well. You have to remember that our culture has been built on You have to be strong and emotion. If you show signs of emotion, then those are signs of weakness. If they're not positive emotions, or if they're not emotions that we want to see, then it's weak. It's considered weak. That's why we don't talk. That's why we don't communicate.
Well, that's a really interesting point you bring up. It's like now that people see that, like, and like Katrina, you are the perfect example of this. Now that people see that, like, athletes, celebrities, business owners, people who they know, okay, this person is clearly strong, this person's clearly
Right.
got their stuff together, but they also are involved in counseling, or they also need therapy, or they're also going through tough stuff. That's kind of maybe been part of the thing that's been breaking down that barrier, perhaps, that you can be strong and you can still be needing help with certain things. And I think that's really cool for people to be able to see. And I think COVID has, in a sense, maybe made it a little easier for, would you say easier for people to reach out and get help about these sorts of things?
Yes, it has, because now, like I said, it's mainstream. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to say that I'm not feeling well. I I'm not feeling well. I feel depressed. It's okay. No one's looking at you like, oh, something's wrong with you. You know. So
Well, I'll hate to bring up something you said earlier. I think that is a way we can make lemonade out of lemons with this whole COVID fiasco. And in a sense, it's been hard for mental health, for individuals that have been struggling. But on the other side of the coin is the fact that, well, now at least the cat's out of the bag. At least people realize it's more okay to ask for help, and at least this topic is becoming more popularized.
right, most definitely. And then they get coping skills, right? They get coping skills. If they need meds or medication, they can get their medication. If they need someone just to talk to, they can have someone to talk to. That they don't have to continuously repeat the story, because their counselor would know, their history, their assessment, and then the counselor has the knowledge base of understanding the diagnosis and relating it to the issues that the client may be having. So yeah, you're
Hmm.
making sweeter lemonade because you have all the right ingredients now.
Sweet tea, sweet lemonade. You Southerners like it sweet. That's for sure.
Yes, we do. We do.
So I wanna shift gears a little bit here, and so we've talked a little bit about mental health, but we're also talking, at least in my world, we're working a lot with private healthcare practices, and they've been struggling with telehealth, and they've been struggling with, how do I start a business with everything that's gone on? We have providers that literally have had to start their business in the middle of COVID. We have other providers that have never used video before, and now there's this. That's everything. Video consultations and video appointments are the majority, if not the whole component of their care. So what like stepping out of your successful business owner shoes and going back 10 or so years, like what advice would you give to people in this climate? Like they're passionate about helping people from a healthcare, mental or physical healthcare standpoint, but like it's tough right now. It's tough because of regulatory changes. It's tough because you know things have changed since COVID, and it's tough because of the technology requirements that every business owner now needs to really get a handle over, because that's how we interact. So, what advice would you give to people that are like, you know, wanting to be a private healthcare practitioner, owning their own business, or trying to get there, or maybe found themselves like you in that position when they didn't really ask for it?
Well, the first thing I like to say is to always be a student. Okay. That's the first thing. You always have to be a student, and you always have to be thirsty for knowledge. Okay. Accept that there will always be change. Without change, there is no progress. So if you think you're going to start a business and it's going to remain the same you put a system in place and this is going to be the system forever. If you think that, then you're fighting a losing battle. Know that you're going to set up systems. You're going to meet people. You're going to have mentors. You're going to have people who do consulting for you. You will incorporate that information in your business. It will work. And then you will have to change it to keep up with the constant changes that we're going through throughout the country. So just always know that you're always going to be growing and changing.
And I like what you said there with like being a student was the first thing that, because like I feel like, and maybe this is just me, I feel like so many people feel like they have to have all the answers and show everyone else that they know everything on social media. Like, and like, hey, look at how much success I've had. Hey, look at how great my opinion is about this thing. And it's like, you know, I'm wondering why people don't say, man, I don't know the answer to this, people. What do y'all think? Or like, this is really challenging me right now. Like, what have y'all learned about this particular struggle, or this? What are your opinions on the particular issue? Like, why is that? Maybe I'm getting us too much on a tangent here, but I've thought about this a lot, and I'm just like curious.
It's similar to what you said about what we were talking about with mental health earlier. You know, if we say that we're sick, then it's a sign of weakness, right? So if we say that we don't know something, then it's a sign of weakness, that you're really not that smart, you know? That's what we've been programmed to believe. If you're an entrepreneur, you're starting a business, you need to say, I don't know. I do not know. I'll either get research, I'll do research to find out, or I'll look for someone who can tell me that's an expert in what they do. I think that was one of my biggest hurdles when I started my business, was to understand the things that I didn't know and delegate it to other people that were smarter than me. Okay. For instance, in this business, I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm not a doctor or psychiatrist. You know, my background is elementary ed. So I've had to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, right? And I tell them all the time, you're here because you're smarter than me in what you do. So you need to do that. You can bounce it off of me because I'm really good with systems, right? And processing information and putting the small pieces together to push us in the direction. But as far as diagnosis and licensure, see, you all are smarter than me in that. I don't know. I'm asking you, you know, putting the pieces together. So I think if people realized that they weren't as smart as they thought that they were, they would do much better.
It's that is a lesson I'm trying to learn every day. It's like, man, you know, there's so much bad programming. There's so much like, at least me and a lot of my friends and people that I know, like grew up being told, you know, you're smart. You've got answers. You know, you can figure it out if you just study harder, if you just work harder. And a lot of that's true. A lot of that, like, there's definitely a lot to be said about digging into things and working really hard. But there's also a lot to be said about like admitting to people that you don't know what you're doing so that they can help or be involved in the project, and maybe they have an idea that makes things work 20 times better.
Right, because if you don't know, if you don't know the background to a situation, you don't know what questions to ask.
That's just it. You know,
Yeah.
like that's just it. At least in our journey, there were several times where, you know, I was like, oh, well, we don't know. We're just gonna dig deeper and just spend more time on trying to figure this out. And then, you know, 2 weeks go by and we were looking in the completely wrong direction. There's someone just told me, hey, like you're looking in the wrong direction. Go do this instead. Of like, that would have saved some serious angst, I guess.
Right. And so now with the internet, information is so accessible, and people are now, because of COVID, we're more comfortable with using Zoom. So we can just jump on a Zoom call with anyone around the world and get information, right? So it's easier now for us to work with each other, to pick our brains, to see how we can advance. all different types of platforms now.
For sure. Well, one thing I'll say, and maybe I'll challenge you in this point, like the one thing that I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but it's the one thing that might be more difficult about how accessible everyone and everything is right now is like, are there instances where like people are feeling lonely or feeling like worse because of social media and because of how they feel like everyone else has this cool thing happening and you know has all these likes and friends and they do not. Is there, I mean, what's your opinion on that? Do you given that you have this background, like you started a mental health agency, behavioral health agency, you also have, you know, a big background in education. So I'm guessing you have a perspective on this. Like, what is that contributing to the problem? And is that what you're seeing at your agency?
Yes, like we say here in Louisiana, it could be a blessing and a curse. And that's where we are with social media. um, I know with my own experience with my social media pages, I have to be very decisive about what I look at, right? So I make sure I'm not looking at just these random posts of everything is great, you know, the sun is shining over here, and I have a big giant house, and this, that, and the other, because it will take you off of your focus, right?
Mm,
So I try to use social media just for education purposes. So we try to teach our clients that as well. You know, like make sure when you're going on social media that you know a little background of the people that you're looking at and why are you going to this site? You know, are you going to this site for encouragement? Are you going to this site so you can find out about your diagnosis? And then when they find out information, we always tell them, hey, ask your counselor, bounce it off your counselor, and let them give you the pros and cons of the information that you're receiving. Because not everybody's situation in depression or anxiety is the same. Okay. So always getting information and bouncing it off of other people to see, you know, those experts, right? Not the people that are sitting next to you, because they usually know the same amount of information you do. You want to bounce it off someone that you consider an expert in that field or that you know knows more than you do, right?
it's got to be like, just thinking about it that way. I mean, obviously, counselor provides tremendous resource in helping you get to the bottom of something, but then also figuring out how to look at the different things that you're involved in on a regular basis in a more objective lens, like getting a third party's perspective on how you're using social media. That's interesting.
Right, right. And then we're able to point them into different directions for social media. We're always telling people to limit their time on the different platforms, you know, because coping skills comes with building networks around you, right? Using the resources that are right in your arm's reach. You can walk or you can drive to somewhere there where you can connect with people around you, as opposed to people that are, you know, in virtual land out there. Because when you need help, you need to be able to access those people.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you, I've gone through the whole roller coaster of emotions on social media within like a 5 or 10 minute time span. So I hear you. I hear you for
Yeah.
sure.
You have to be very careful with social media
Oh
because
yeah,
everything is not what it appears to be.
for sure, for sure. So, you know, I think before we kind of close things up today, like for the folks that are listening here that you know would like to get in contact with you, whether they're potential recipients in your area looking for counseling, or private business owners in the healthcare world that need a shortcut through 10 years of pain, so to speak. What's the best way to get in contact with you, Katrina, in your business?
Okay, you can reach us on our telephone numbers, right? 318-681-9935 is our main number. It will get you to any of our locations. We do have a website. Some wonderful company that I'm using created it called meddkit. That's www.superiorcounseling.care.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Katrina. It